Do you know someone who's hard on themselves? Or maybe that's you. I can definitely relate. Sometimes I have a hard time enjoying my accomplishments because I worry I wasn't actually good enough, or that the accomplishment was an outlier, that it'll never happen again. Or sometimes I'll start to celebrate an accomplishment, but then I'll notice someone who seems to have done it better, and I lose any enthusiasm for what I did. Do you ever feel that way? Do you ever feel like your best isn't quite good enough? Not because you don't meet someone else's standard, but because you don't meet your own. This tendency to minimize what I've done can also turn into an inability to celebrate other people. Someone does something great, and instead of celebrating them, I'm either jealous or I secretly wonder if I could have done it better. Not everyone has this problem. Some people really know how to savor the moment. My brother is that kind of person. If I have good news, I want him to know, because no one knows how to celebrate an accomplishment like he does. He makes you feel like you just won the Nobel Peace Prize, even if you just learned how to tie your shoe. And when I see this characteristic in somebody, I really admire it. I want to be that kind of person. I think God wants me to be like that too. Because if I don't change, if I'm not careful, my personal negativity could negatively impact my relationships with others. Now, this attitude can also crop up in our relationship with God. We may look at where we are with God, but it doesn't feel good enough. We look at a choice we made that felt like progress forward, and then we realize how much more progress we want to make. Or we compare our relationship with God to other people's relationship with Him. Instead of noticing how far we've come, we noticed how far away we seem. But what if we quit seeing the steps we have yet to take and start celebrating the ones we've already taken? What if instead of feeling defeated for having not yet arrived, we celebrated simply because we aren't where we were before? But more than that, what if we not only celebrated the steps in our own lives, but in the lives of those around us? And for a lot of us, adopting this mindset will take some time. It isn't something that comes naturally. For whatever reason, we're hard on ourselves and hard on others. But Scripture gives us a picture of what it means to celebrate the steps we take as individuals and the steps others are taking around us. One of Jesus' most famous ways of teaching was through parables. Sometimes Jesus would explain what they meant, but a lot of times he wouldn't. Instead, challenging his listeners to draw the conclusions themselves. One of the most famous parables in the Bible is the parable of the prodigal, or the lost son. Now, even if you don't attend church, you've probably heard this story before. It provides the perfect picture of what God intends for us when it comes to celebrating others. This is the story that Jesus told. A man had 2 sons. The younger son told his father, "I want my share of your estate now, before you die." So his father agreed to divide his wealth between his sons. A few days later, this younger son packed all his belongings and moved to a distant land, and there he wasted all his money in wild living. About the time his money ran out, a great famine swept over the land, and he began to starve. He persuaded a local farmer to hire him, and the man sent him into his fields to feed the pigs. The young man became so hungry that even the pods he was feeding the pigs looked good to him, but no one gave him anything. When he finally came to his senses, he said to himself, "At home, even the hired servants have food enough to spare, and here I am dying of hunger. I will go home to my father and say, 'Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you, and I'm no longer worthy of being called your son. Please take me on as a hired servant.' So he returned home to his father, and while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming. Filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. His son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you, and I am no longer worthy of being called your son.' But his father said to the servants, 'Quick, bring the finest robe in the house and put it on him. Get a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet, and kill the calf we have been fattening. We must celebrate with a feast, for this son of mine was dead and has now returned to life. He was lost, but now he is found.' So the party began. Meanwhile, the older son was in the fields working. When he returned home, he heard music and dancing in the house, and he asked one of the servants what was going on. "Your brother is back," he was told, "and your father has killed the fattened calf. We are celebrating because of his safe return." Well, the older brother was angry and wouldn't go in. His father came out and begged him, but he replied, "All these years I've slaved for you and never once refused to do a single thing you told me to do. And in all that time, you never gave me even one young goat for a feast with my friends. Yet when this son of yours comes back after squandering your money on prostitutes, you celebrate by killing the fattened calf." His father said to him, "Look, dear son, you have always stayed by me, and everything I have is yours. We had to celebrate this happy day, for your brother was dead and has come back to life. He was lost, but now he is found." Wow. This is one of my favorite stories that Jesus tells. The key for us comes at the end of the story. When the younger brother hit rock bottom, he realized it was time to go home. Now, this would be a tough decision to make. Talk about swallowing your pride. He didn't see his decision to come home as a step in the right direction, as something to be celebrated, as progress. Instead, he could only see the poor decisions he had made in the past. He judged himself harshly as a result. And not surprisingly, his older brother agreed. The older brother saw the younger brother returning home and thought there was nothing about his return that was worth celebrating. In fact, the older brother was thinking the younger brother's failures highlighted how good a guy he was. The older brother had done everything right. He had remained faithful to his father. He had lived an exemplary life. These dynamics served to make the father's reaction so powerful because the father was the only one who got it right. He saw the prodigal's return as something worth celebrating because he saw it as a step, a crucial step. It was progress. Some poor choices may have been made prior to his return, but that didn't discount the step he had taken in the right direction. And he said so, not to the prodigal, but to the servants. And while the younger brother was giving his apology, the father was telling the servants to start putting a party together. What a message to send to his son. The fact that you've decided to come back is worth getting excited about. Watch what I'm going to do on your behalf. But the father didn't stop there. He made sure the older son saw this too. He made sure the older son got the same message. We're going to celebrate because your brother was lost and now he's found. That's something worth throwing a party over. It's because of the step he took. It has nothing to do with you and what you have gotten or haven't gotten right. This is about your brother and all of us stopping long enough to acknowledge he has come home. I love this story because it's a picture of a God who is eager to celebrate with us, and a picture of our unwillingness to celebrate ourselves or others. But God considers a step in the right direction the perfect reason to have a party. So, celebrate the steps you take in your relationship with God while celebrating other steps as well. You know what's interesting? We never find out if the older brother attended the party. We never find out if the younger son was changed or if he continued to make poor choices. But maybe Jesus was vague about this on purpose. Because God doesn't celebrate with conditions. He simply celebrates what is. Notice what the Father said. We had to celebrate this happy day. And if this loving Father had a reason to celebrate such a small step, then we have reason to celebrate as well. There are people around you who are taking steps toward God, but you may not notice because they're not the steps you expect. They don't worship the same way you do. They don't use the same language as you. They're not growing in their relationship with God the way you are, but still, they may be taking steps toward God. Steps that may not meet your standards, but steps that God is using to grow them. What would happen if we let up on those people? What if we celebrated their small steps? What would that do to their next step? Would they be more likely to take it? I bet they would. And the same goes for you. Chances are you're being hard on yourself for a number of reasons. You wish you were further along than you are. You wish you were where someone else is. But what if you cut yourself some slack? What if you celebrated the victories you have had, the steps you have taken, and the progress that you have made? How would your life look different? What if you set aside your expectations of what your relationship with God should look like and let it be what He wants it to be? What if you not only saw the small steps God asks you to take every day, but you also took them? And when you did, you realized just how huge those small steps really are. All of our steps will look different. We may dismiss other people's steps because they don't look like we think they should. And we're too hard on ourselves because our steps don't look like we think they should. But like the loving Father in the story of the prodigal son, God sees a reason to celebrate every step taken toward Him, no matter how big or how small. The prodigal son shows us there's no standard of perfection that God is holding us to. The son simply came home. He said, "Here I am, Dad. I messed up, and I'll completely understand if I need to earn your love back." And the father reacted by celebrating his son's step and restoring him to everything he left behind. God is committed to you, and He's not going anywhere. Regardless of how many steps you take toward Him or away from Him. And it's time we learned to celebrate steps. The steps we take and the steps others take. So participate in the party. Celebrate steps of faith in the lives of others. Celebrate the friend who opened their Bible for the first time. Celebrate that friend who prayed about something instead of worrying about it. Celebrate the steps. Don't just let this be a good idea. Let's do this. Let's trust that God is leading people, and let's encourage them in their walk with Him every step of the way.